Hi, my name's Tim Johnson. I got an email the other day from someone asking me a bit about cross addiction and what it was. So I thought I'd just make this video, a quick one today, just to explain a bit about cross addiction and perhaps the dangers of it and what to watch out for. Sort of a rough definition of addiction, if you like, is any behavior which you crave and use, which brings you temporary pleasure or temporary relief, but will bring definite negative consequences, and yet you still crave it and you still use that behavior time and time again to give you this temporary relief, temporary pleasure. And you can sort of link that to any addiction. In my case, over the past 30 odd years, it's alcohol and opiates. But any addiction, you could use that definition as a rough way of explaining it or defining it. I just want to share with you now something that happened, because there's been times over the past sort of over 30 years of addiction that I've had periods of clean time where I've been away from my drugs of choice, if you like, which would be alcohol and opiates. And I'll share a time with you in my late 30s, early 40s, where I had a period of a few years of what I considered to be sobriety. In other words, I decided that enough, although my behaviour hadn't escalated to the level it was later to reach in my late 40s and 50s, it was giving me cause for concern, and would later, in my later 40s, lead me to rehab. So, at the end of my 30s and early, in my early 40s, I decided to get clean, and I did. And it was a struggle, as it always is, but I did, and I was very proud of that fact. And I took up what I thought was a healthy hobby and interest, which was running. And of course, being me and being an addict and not having dealt with, as I now realise, were the real issues behind all my addiction, I went crackers on the running and ended up running 6 marathons and about a dozen Great North runs over a period of time. Now, I'm quite a big man. At that time, I'm 6 foot, nearly 6'2", and I weigh nearly 14.5, 15 stone. And I'm not really built for running. However, I approached this new lifestyle I had, clean of alcohol and drugs, my family proud of me, with the zealousness of an addict, simple as that. So yes, I ran the 6 marathons, London Marathon, New York Marathon. I became absolutely obsessed with running and health, not realizing that it was a cross addiction, just another way of hiding from my feelings and not seeing the negative consequences it was having, because it was having so many negative consequences. Although you may not think that from a healthy point of view, and yes, it is healthier than drinking and taking drugs. There's no doubt about that. But what it cost me was my hip. I ended up having a hip replacement operation because I'd crushed it with the many hundreds of miles that I'd run, and my family never saw me. We ended up having a negative time at home because my children never saw me, because I was so obsessed with the running it was giving me. And if I missed it for a day, without realizing, I was craving it and craving, if I didn't get my running fix, then I didn't feel, I had the same restless, irritable and discontent feeling that I had, almost like withdrawal from drugs and alcohol, or not having a drink or a drug. That feeling, of anxiety and stress and worry and, guilt, if you like, of not having, had my fix, my running fix. And it was an addiction, a cross addiction. And now that has happened many times, not just during, over the periods where I've had, short periods of sobriety, because I never dealt with my original issues. It's happened to me with food. and it happens to many people with food, you generally find, people who first get clean, if they haven't dealt with those issues behind the addiction, those things that are really driving, you towards the addiction, which, generally is pain, and pain from the past, unresolved issues, all sorts of, things that I talk about on this channel, about, things they haven't done, forgiveness, and all the rest of it, the problems they haven't resolved, they don't realize they've not resolved, then food, becomes just a substitute for the drugs and alcohol, really, sugar, because it's all about getting that dopamine hit. Because if you're not really happy inside, if you've not resolved all those issues that drive you towards addiction, you will cross addict without even realizing it. The most common one is food, there's no doubt about that. So you'll turn to, sugary snacks and processed food to give you that temporary feeling of relief. But then again, there's the negative consequences at the end of it, the massive weight you put on, the low mood, the lack of energy, all the things, all the negative consequences are there, as there are with any addiction. So I think you just need to be aware of it, especially when you first get clean, that you don't cross addict. Many people end up, obsessively going to the gym every day, all the eating. Some people turn to other behavior such as, sex, pornography, shopping, gambling, anything to give them that the same dopamine hit, that same temporary relief from whatever it is they haven't resolved yet, that they were when they were using alcohol and using drugs to do the same thing and numbing their emotions and their feelings, which is all we do with cross addiction. All we're doing is hiding from those emotions and those feelings and that pain that we don't want to feel, that we haven't resolved. And I think it's just a case of being aware of that. And there's nothing wrong with good, healthy behaviors, such as gym and such as, running and walking and exercise and eating healthily. You can do all those things and having the odd treat and odd sweet and all the rest of it. But the thing is, you need to just be aware, like I am now, very much so, that that I use those things to enhance my life now and strengthen it. They're not, I don't lean on them for any sort of temporary sort of relief or pleasure or hiding from any feelings or any emotions, because I've dealt, or I am still dealing and have dealt with a lot of those issues and that pain from my past, and that lack of self-worth and self-hatred and all the rest of it that was driving me, towards my addictions. I've dealt and I'm dealing with all that stuff now. So I'm very aware of what I do to my body and how, and I'm very aware of my behavior. And I take, I meditate and breathe and think about what I'm doing before I do it. So that's cross addiction explained, and it can take many forms, and it can be just as damaging, trust me, to you, your family, and all the rest of it as alcohol and drugs can be. So you just need to be really aware of it. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, please like, please share the videos if you think they're helpful, because it just makes more people, means that more people can see them. Thank you for listening. Carpe Diem. Seize the day today. Much love to you. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.